Very well. Dear guests, dear colleagues, good morning, everyone. We're in for another session at the margins of the forum. This is an annual event, the technological agenda within the round table framework, the plenary session. And we're in for 1.5 hours, 90 minutes of quite a specialized topic. It's the second last day before the end of the forum, and we have a good turnout in the audience. This session is also being recorded, and I'd like to thank all of the international visitors and online audiences joining us today, and welcome you to participation. First of all, our speakers today. This is a roundtable of international cooperation in electronics industry, the basis of national technological sovereignty, new challenges and unique opportunities. Certainly, this subject is not just historically motivated. However, today, there is no country in the world that owns self-sufficient set of technologies which would enable it to compete. And there are no other countries. In the next session, there is international cooperation in science. There is no other world country, and certainly in natural sciences. The system is such that there won't be any country which will be self-sufficient scientifically as well. I'm very happy to welcome everyone once again at this event, at our forum, which is an anniversary forum. This is a 15th forum in turn. Let me introduce the speakers. Bezrukov Andrei, President, Technological Sovereignty Experts Association, Professor of MGIMO University. And last year, we had a similar lineup: Liga Stayeva, Svetlana, CEO of Autonomous Non-Profit Organization for the Development of Radio Electronics Industry Consortium IT Hardware Manufacturing, Evgeny Abakumov, Director of Information Infrastructure, Rosatom State Nuclear Energy Corporation. Evgeny, I hope you can hear us well. Very well. I can see you're giving us some good energy. However, we cannot hear you quite well at this point yet. Next, Ayrat Khayrulin, Minister for Digital Development, Information Technologies and Communications of the Republic of Tatarstan. Next is Kasyanova Gulnara, CEO Micron. Stepanov Evgeny, General Manager of CEO of Acel Techno. Now, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, the meetings on the margins of the forum are focused on technological development issues of our country, technological sovereignty, and certainly this is impossible without international cooperation. It's critically important to develop direct business contacts in 3 key fields. First of all, opportunity of access to technologies. Secondly, is access to technologies such as procurement and also sharing experience and competencies, and also export of our technologies. And staff training is also not least important. Today we have Tomsk colleagues present in the audience. Very happy to welcome you. TUSUR is one of the leading engineering training and electronics training universities, one of the few left, and we always support the colleagues. Andrei, since this is an international subject, you as a man well known internationally and domestically, currently at this point in time, could you please introduce some current trends and the issues on 3 points? First of all, the threats entailed by lack of national sovereignty in technology. Next, the points of interest, prospects for development and cooperation to avoid and close the gaps. And thirdly, finally, these are low-hanging fruit. Everything we have to provide in terms of critical infrastructure development, as a minimum. So I would like to hear your position on these issues, and then we will develop further discussion, because certainly this will lay the groundwork for further discussions. Thank you so much. It's certainly an extensive issue, very hard to cover it all. Well, the procedure is only 10 minutes, so please do your best. Well, I think we do need to lay the groundwork for this discussion. First of all, what is microelectronics? This is the part of the industry and science which is focused towards the future most of all. Any technological development includes microelectronics today. There isn't one robot, not one satellite that wouldn't rest on countries' ability to manufacture microelectronics. And the future will be even more difficult because we'll go into personal robotization, and the ability to manufacture microelectronics and production capabilities are going to be critical. So now, let me be metaphysical. I have some time for philosophy. Certainly, it's also important. We are going into a new technological cycle. Now, this means that those who are going to be first to achieve key solutions and implement them into real products is going to capture the markets and become the market leader. Now, it should be noted that we're still behind on that, and our job is to transform the situation and become a market leader. It's difficult, but we certainly have no choice in the matter. Secondly, we're going into block division of world economy. We're seeing techno-economic blocks. Two are clear. One is Chinese, second is Anglo-Saxon. Others will emerge. What is a block? It's a huge piece of the market, of the total pie, where one player dominates. He can provide access to others or not at will. It's got its own infrastructure, its own system, its own resources, and own technological platforms and standards. So it should be noted for ourselves that in this large block-type world, first of all, we may not be allowed to enter the markets that we can still enter, because they will be already taken, and we will enter with our own technological platforms, which are going to be alien to them. And the key job is how are we going to create our large technological landscape in this small market. If it's not going to be a huge technological landscape, we will never get the buyback. We will never create large technological enterprises. So let me simplify it in a nutshell. In 1929, Stalin said, industrialization or we will be crushed, industrialized or die. And if this industrialization of the USSR would not have happened, just imagine what would have happened in the Second World War. Now, just imagine, I would summarize the job we have. If we don't find strategic partners in the next 15 years, over the next 15 years, for technological strategic alliances to cover at least 1 billion consumers, we will not have the money flows, capital flows to provide for advanced scientific development, advanced infrastructure and well-being. So microelectronics is certainly a cornerstone of this paradigm. Now we understand that we need partners, and who can these partners be? Everyone except China and US. Strategically, China helps us. It's a tactical partner, and they're doing it in our interest, first of all. That's what they're guided by. Next, we're going to have to sink or swim alone with others who are facing the same issues, lack of critical mass. It may be Southeast Asia, it may be India, it may be Iran, it may be the Arab world. Those are who are in the same boat, where there is a huge dominating player and a second technological emergent player. All the rest will need to create their own technological landscape. This is the imperative, which certainly follows and provides for all the technological order for the next 20 years, and we'll need to play in this field. So that means right now we need to go and build these technological alliances, make platforms, standards, if necessary, create uniform products at the technological enterprises, because everyone understands well they don't own the market, they don't dominate the market. And also this division of the world into techno-economical blocks, this division is now ruining the technological chains which have been constructed over the last 2 or 3 decades during globalization era. The US over the last 2 years have conducted an analysis of all the key technological chains and are actively bringing all of their production, manufacturing, components and materials out of the countries where they see political threats, where they cannot politically dominate, such as China, for instance. Just look at the iPhone technological and supply chains change. Design in California, chips in Taiwan, manufacturing in China, and sales in Kazan, for instance, right? This is what used to happen until COVID-19. Until 2019, we saw no problems. Now 4 years passed. Design still stayed in California. Taiwan, TSMC, is being transferred, planted over back in the US. Once it's transplanted, Taiwan won't have as much value. Now, the turnkey manufacturing is being taken from China, accelerating tempo into India, Vietnam, and others. And we cannot buy phones anymore as easily, right? So this is what's happening across all the technological chains. Secondly, there is a process of redistribution ongoing in the markets. And we are going to end up in a digital concentration camp, because if you fully control the system, and if you don't control the system and you don't understand how it works, then it can be turned off at the whim. There is digital imperialism, neo-colonialism, and at no point we should end up in this situation in no sector of the economy. This would be certainly a ruin, because we need to also become one of the controlling parties. And the third point is that we are going towards cyber warfare. This may be active cyber warfare, or perhaps some slow, cold arms race, as it used to happen with nuclear weapons. Certainly we didn't get to that, thankfully. But you see, today we see serious investments into quantum cryptography, into AI. We're going to see quantum communications. These are huge projects, huge investments. And what are we dealing with? We cannot avoid this race. They are not going to evade it, because the potential money flows are unimaginable. At least the Congress, US Congress, could count the warheads, but how many lines of code are being written? Nobody counts that. So it's going to be a license to print money. So the people who are going to do that are controlling all the politicians, are controlling the processes. I think you understand what I'm talking about. So we'll need to live in that paradigm. And our electronic house of cards is only a house of cards. Remember the old tale, there were 3 pigs, and one of the smart ones was building his home of bricks. But for the last 20 years, we've been building our house out of wood and sticks. But certainly you cannot make deals with a wolf. He is a predator. So this is where we ended up. For some time now, we'll need to collect the bricks and slowly put them together in a house, cement it, and once we have a brick foundation, we can take a breath. And now we need to focus on building this foundation, and we need a clear plan of action, identifying risks, vulnerabilities, priorities, key allies, joint production capabilities and potential projects, geography, So we could not be excluded in the future or cheated, and that's why we need clear microelectronic strategy the government will make. Thank you so much. 3 key points. Everything is very important, certainly. The market cannot handle the planned economy, critical manufacturing, and monetary emission. We remember USSR experience on financing nuclear armaments. This is a very expensive and difficult exercise. Certainly unions, allies, the countries and geography needs to be defined, and cybersecurity, white and red hackers, cyber sandboxes are becoming more popular. We see more projects emerging, and let's hope they will develop. Russia, thank God, has a great mathematical school which enables companies such as Kaspersky's lab, Positive Technologies, and a number of other companies which are working and scaling their algorithms, implementing them into service model or licensing agreements. But I think most critical is the opportunity and our obligation for the future generation to create a self-sufficient economic model working on microelectronics industry. And certainly this is a question for Gulnar Shamirova. JSC Micron, our market leader in Russia in terms of microelectronics. We are in close communications. We see huge projects, great ideas, very good trends. So in your opinion, Gulnara, please tell us the vectors for development to provide what Andrei mentioned for our country, for the future generations, to compete and cooperate with international partners, potential partners, those that lack expertise and competencies and need to co-opt with us and cooperate with us for mutual benefit or otherwise. I know that you have an interesting presentation, so you have the floor, madam. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I actually have 2 presentations because the president of Element group of companies, Oleg Ivansov, was preparing for this session and prepared his own presentation. However, at the last point, he had to pull out. But he asked me to also deliver his presentation because he prepared and was keen to take part in this important discussion. So I will endeavor to reply to the questions put forward before. If I don't succeed, I'll hopefully complement it. Now, this is the investment attractiveness of the microelectronics industry. This is a presentation of Mr. Ivansov. Now let's talk about the business paradigm and the development potential. Over the last 3 decades, microelectronics industry was developing as a commodity for 6 countries, which controlled all of the flows and the technologies playing in one technological chain, in the same technological chain. And recently, the issue is not that all of these players turned away from us for political reasons, but due to COVID, trade wars, they also began changing their own relationships between their countries due to the fact that microelectronics is that foundation for technological sovereignty that world leaders need to control completely. Their relationships began transforming, not just relationships with Russia, and everyone decided that they need to exercise more control over the industry compared to the previous 3 decades. If we were to look at the investment attractiveness and investments into the sector, we can see that state support is certainly premier consideration. Investments into microelectronics. Then programs are developed which enable private capital to develop businesses. The leader over the previous years over the recent years has been China over investments into this sector. China is different to others, not just because it invests into manufacturing enterprises and technological development, but also developing materials and production means. This is why it stands out against the rest of the pack in this chain. And over the last 3 decades, this industry saw a team of players, a pack. Now, if we look at CHIPEX US attracting over 39 billion of investments into manufacturing constructions, over $340 billion will be brought from private capital funds. This means that the state guarantees certain frameworks, guarantees certain preferences, certain demand to grow this market. Because it has the multiplication effect. Speaking of electronics, one microelectronics factory also carries another 10 accompanying types of production, developing regions and economics.
So let's see what do we have. So the comrades, they refuse to interact with us, but what with our market growth? The forecast is quite impressive. So about electronic devices, it's nearly 10% per year to 2030. But what should we highlight? That inside the electronic devices, look, it will grow much further and faster. And so impulse substitution is our target. It's digitalized and can be well forecasted. And the fastest growth is here. You can see that we can tell that electronic devices have been developing quite in a good way on civil sector and in military sector. So this module layer, it hadn't wide cooperation in civil market. It wasn't well developed, so the pace is not very impressive right now, but this pace is even higher than in electronic devices. If you look at the driver is the same that is connected with robotics, AR, AI, everything with that forms Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0. It will be presented on our market, but we have a layer which is connected with impulse substitution, the market which we have for today and which may be somehow readjusted to us. And what's about this readjustment? Who can be in cooperation with us? Considering that we here on Russia Islamic World Forum, let's look at Islamic world. If we count the population of Islamic countries, it's more than 1 billion people. So if we consider this number and compare it with the majority, the whole population on Earth, we see that it's a good percent of people from all over the world, and this number will only grow because in Islamic world population grows much faster than in other countries. We don't have a gross domestic product of Russia and India here, but it's still impressive, $26 trillion, and if we add Russia and India, we will overcome United States and will approach China. So in these conditions, it was mentioned by Andrei that the conditions of economy work which show that we can form a system which is self-sufficient for this market reality. What can we actually suggest? If we substitute this market, we have the markets for technologies for existing market, our own technologies, our own equipment developed and manufactured in Russia or in cooperation with Belarus. So if we proceed from this fact, we have several directions which actually can be suggested considering the current market. For example, creating design centers, developing not only for existing technological norms, but for approaching world products. The price of entering is a bit more than $10 million. It's a small price to understand what is microelectronics and to make products especially for your country, for which there is a demand. The next one is building plant. It starts from $2 billion to build a plant. If there is a participation of several countries, you know, it's $1 billion or so. So we can cooperate with other countries and to build a plant not only on Russia's territory but in another country. It can be discussed and taking part in projects on Russia's territory. When we develop new technologies, we invite also other countries to cooperate. The price can be small, $25 million, and it's mostly about understanding and reforming the market, creating new market to sell it and to actually support the international cooperation. So you may use this QR code to ask your questions. So I guess it's time for my own presentation. It continues the topic of cooperation, but it's mostly about production logics. So we discussed investments, self-sufficiency of investments, because we may attract attention of states to the field of microelectronics, that it is the field worth investing in, and Russia understands that. And we actually communicated with our representatives of Islamic world countries, and we see that they understand that too. They understand that it's a vast challenge, and it's quite hard to build a whole chain of cooperation. And our expertise can help to build the ecosystem here, which will form the market of 1 billion people and form the possibilities of reinvestment, because it's very important not only to build, plan, buy technologies, develop technologies, but also have a cycle of investments enough to take part in the race with such countries which are in top 6 here. So we understand now that microelectronics is not only critically important, so it's not in demand in the industries which provide security, social and economic development, but it also forms the future of new industries. The key industry for 4.0 and 5.0, and if you have this growth of world market, I may show you the amount of new plants planned. So the volume of investments which was shown in the previous presentation, look what it spent for 30 plants in China, 26 in US, 8 in European Union. From one side it's a lot of plants, and people always tell that in Arizona there will be a plant for 1 nanometer chips of TSMC. But not all these countries about 1 nanometer chips, 2 nanometer chips, because we have even 150 millimeters chips for power electronics connected to new technologies as some really new, and 200 millimeters chips were of great demand. So here it's 350 nanometers, 28 nanometers scale. It's a large amount of different nanometers, and this segment will only grow with the market, because the market is of 1 billion people. It will grow faster than other markets, and it's necessary to focus on it and understand what can we do, how can we participate here. So the United States, they declare that we invest in microelectronics development a lot, and people can't be on our level, but it's not really true, because it means mostly that if we have many plants, we will have many bankrupts, because it's a difficult field. It's not enough just to build everything. It's important to take right decisions to regulate market. So lots of plants, 2 or 3 plants every year, they go bankrupt. It's mostly about legacy chips and so on and so on. So we can tell you that this will be really great, and the people will gain glory here. But nevertheless, the focus of BCG, it tells us that the countries mostly focus on developing their own production to become less dependent. We actually used to have our own design but production in Southeastern Asia, but now we need to produce it in our country. For example, the growth of a USA share, here we were producing in Taiwan, but to 2032 we will rise the production in their own country from 0 to 28%. What's about the last part, the remaining part of the world? So we will build plants, but like cutting microchips, assembling, testing, packaging, cutting, packaging in chips. We will do it in developing countries such as India, Malaysia, Vietnam, etc. So we like construct our microschemes. We will produce only crystals, but we will pack it. So, but BCG doesn't take into account the fact that these countries have their own interest of Islamic world countries. For example, here where ministries of commerce, they tell that we are interested in this field. Any directions of cooperation? I may show you that is already can be written in media. For example, Oman, they are quite interested in this field. They have created a design center. They have issued 2 microchips. And we produce them on TSMC. So we started from design center. India again, from BCG part, we plan to. We think that India will only package them, but India really wants to build 5 plants of crystal production. It's not what BCG wants from them. They decide themselves. The government creates programs, stimulates investments in order to start crystal production in India. According to the same report, the USA will need 67,000 people in the field of microelectronics to cover the necessity of the staff for plants they actually design. So the lack of staff is the key aspect of microelectronics development. We see that we also need staff, qualified staff, 150,000 people. We need to actually invite to this field, and we also need to attract some people to build new plants. And in order to promote this topic, we need to launch some staff development programs, which we have in Zelenograd, for example. We have such programs with Tomsk, because we have people who cooperate with Tomsk State University and with some other universities of our country, of physics, engineers, etc. So we have separate program. I will briefly mention about it a bit later, but we are ready to be partners with all the universities willing to give practice for their specialists, to help them to develop great specialists. Because before that, in 2-3 years, our specialists were going abroad to work because the market wasn't well developed. But now the situation radically changed because before that we used to think that our specialist will go to California, but now the specialist is not interested in it because we ourselves can suggest him several directions, because in Russia microelectronics has another place right now. So some concrete steps from state were taken, including steps for international cooperation. I want to highlight 3 documents: concept of technological development, a strategy of science and technology development until 2030, and strategy of connection industry development. Here we understand that we give a definition of technical sovereignty in cooperation with friendly countries, and it's written in the documents which were issued this year. And we have a control of our equipment until the highest level. We have here the demands that the equipment bought by the state should have Russian electronic components, and it forms the market. Industry Development Fund financed 276 industrial projects for 142 billion rubles for the previous year. So 2 projects on Micron we had, one in this year, the next actually will be implemented the next year. Another production line we have together with Ministry of Industry and Commerce, and we will start working with it quite soon. So the number of production we develop today will allow us to give the staff work in our country. So the drivers of growth, what should we highlight here? That the growth of common market is 15%, 29% is the growth of domestic electronics growth. Here you can invest. The formats of cooperation, the country which wasn't familiar with the field of microelectronics before, what should we do to become familiar? First of all, information interaction. You should understand which market do you have, the amount of investments, what do you want to control. Islamic world, BRICS countries, we will discuss it on these forums, on these venues, taking part in forums to actually have investments from other countries to organize production. It's also a good topic to discuss on these events. Common development of materials. We have developed a part of materials, and we know technical requirements for these materials which we will use in our production. And we are ready, together with our colleagues, to develop it. Standardization, certification, what actually controls the format of a market. So we are preparing ourselves that we will have electronic SIM cards, because there will be a chip responsible for identification. And right now, only 2 companies in the world, both in the USA, are responsible for certification and a database of eSIM. And how can we actually use it if we are banned to use the help of international organizations? Here we need to do something here ourselves, thanks to technological sovereignty, and we will control these devices together with friendly countries in this field. The last slide, technologies. Of course, microelectronics, very hype connected with reducing the number of nanometers, the less the better. But 1 nanometer is not the limit, because the devices will become more complicated, and the possibilities of them can be achieved thanks to other directions, to many layer packaging, for example, thanks to using other technological materials. And here the technologies, current technologies, give us a new chance to build these new nanometer chips, because the previous year 180 nanometers Chinese university showed actually chip which is quite great, and it can become competitive 7 nanometer chip. It's a great example. It encourages us and allows us to achieve a breakthrough in this field. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gulnara. As always, great, interesting. If you don't mind, several questions. Tell me, please, what do you think? Is every country should have its own independent production of microelectronics? Yes, I think, but the maths is quite difficult here, because the volume of investments, 15 years for return on investment, it's too hard. China can afford it, but the rest of the countries, they can't afford it. So international cooperation is the necessity. You know, nuclear weapons, it's hard to return on investments on them. So probably here it's the same problem. You need to build the plant and to see whether anybody wants to buy this production. But you know, if our country considers, or any other countries, they consider themselves as empires, is it imperative to have these plants in this industry? Yes, and moreover, we have plants in this industry. We have 60 years of experience, but we were not participating in investments race, considering with in these 6 countries. But we still have the advantage, because we're not trying to achieve a minimal amount of nanometers, but we have great specialists, physics, engineers, great scientific schools, so we can look at this topic from another angle somehow. You know, you can't build architecture of calculating on a single centralized principle. You need to somehow spread it, and artificial intelligence allows us to create platforms that will change the architecture of chips. So let's do it. Universities also should participate, as well as scientific centers, of course. The whole range here, and they all should move in this direction. It's important for us to understand what should we do in each direction to achieve concrete results. So the countries which understand that they should have technological sovereignty, and they should understand that we are ready to help them.
But it's certainly important to own nuclear weapons. Yes, certainly. Same as own microelectronics. Otherwise, you won't be an empire, right? And now, a risky question. I heard that annually a few microelectronics factories go bankrupt. Can the equipment be bought? Well, certainly we can buy equipment, basically, but equipment and enterprise hardware can be purchased, but you won't be able to buy the technologies. And technological know-how provides for operation of this equipment. Only a few operators in the world provide this. That's why Russia and other countries are saying, for example, we want to build a factory, and they say, yes, you can build it, but nobody will sell the technologies. However, Russia develops own technologies. This is the key advantage of Russia. That's where the country has to share these technologies, has to cooperate and interact with other countries to bring it to a new high-quality level. So the government bodies don't understand this point. Are they prepared to find resources and solutions? Well, certainly. additional 3 vectors for manufacturing development have already been earmarked, and now we are focused on more important projects. We have an additional 2 enterprises in the works, and we're going to continue working on that. Well, God willing, the country is in your hands, and our job is to provide all assistance possible. Number 1. Thank you. Well, if I may, a question on market development. There are a few key points. First of all, protectionism, staff training, and also the standards that Gulnara mentioned, including international cooperation and ROI on the industry, self-sufficiency, internal market regulation, perhaps EAEC markets included. Yesterday, during the private talks with the Ministry of Industry of Russia, we discussed these points, and there are a number of creative ideas to perform this job in country. Now, Svetlana, you have a huge experience in radio electronics industry, management experience. You are an advocate of national market development and formation. Now, could you please tell us about your experience, your challenges, the right measures for regulatory frameworks that could be implemented? Do we have important legislation which could help us to develop what Gulnara is proposing to construct? Thank you, Gulnara, for Svetlana is saying, for your very optimistic charge to our discussion. Now, I would like to comment on the House of Cards mentioned earlier and its quality. Import replacement became the buzzword at the end of 2014, early 2015. And at that point, it became an understanding that we do need a brick house, right? However, the quality was yet unclear, and we began coining the term import replacement. We created first manufacturing enterprises for computing equipment. I agree completely with previous speakers. Certainly state support and funding is necessary. It will be impossible to create it otherwise. And quite just recently, Vasily Shpak mentioned the fact that the Ministry of Industry and Trade, according to 109th government regulation, has assigned over 146 billion to over 450 projects for development of radio electronics, including computing equipment. And the outcomes were that we saw a register emerge for Russian radio electronics equipment, and currently the list included in the computational equipment list certainly responds to needs. There is a separate high-end solution vector, one of the components of the race Gulnara mentioned, but in terms of the general need for certain types of equipment, we're closing the gaps on this list. And it would be very sensible at the point when we showed what our capabilities. The question arises, should we make this house out of bricks? And what type of bricks will they be? Because then we are moving towards quality issues. And certainly, I'm not talking about the quality of equipment operation, but the quality of that house built, the whole structure. And speaking of international cooperation, any type of collaboration, we have to understand these bricks in the structure. Otherwise, cooperation would be impossible. Now, in 2022, having assessed the outcomes of import replacement, we moved timely, and the events of 2022 certainly bolstered the need for technological sovereignty. Now, I'm not talking about import replacement. We're talking about technological sovereignty and independence. We shifted towards a new product quality control when shifting away from the financial part towards the scoring system. Now, what is the scoring system? This is the regulation number 719 in terms of computing equipment, when we looked and presented the list of technological operations, part of any device. I'm speaking of the key steps, and whether it's made in Russia or not. A country which claims to produce a domestically made equipment, how was it made? Which design agency did they use? Well, only 44th federal law remains when advantages will be provided in government procurement. The one you mentioned is actually inactive. The key rate, CCL, the scoring system, in your opinion, this scores this complexity in procedures of identifying national domestic production origin. Why do we need that? Why are we bringing all this red tape in country? Well, this red tape provides for necessary support measures, and they already used to work, because only companies that manufacture domestically, so they worked, right? Yes, they worked. And now, going back to 22, our developers of computing equipment, I'm speaking of private companies now, predominantly, these were private investments. Over 36 private companies stood the test of the sanctions. We haven't lost anyone, but instead new companies entered the market, and the status of developers of domestically manufactured products enabled them to use government support measures and frameworks. So today, actually, we are in talks now with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and in these talks, we are shaping the agenda for the programs of our product lines with the necessary support measures for these product lines to be implemented. And the key focus is on presenting technological operations, chains, and development. Over the last 2 years, in the computing equipment segment, with the support of the Foundation for Industrial Development, we saw realization, and this is a very complex business logic exercise. We implemented over 5 projects on manufacturing, enterprise creation, and development. This was much more in-depth compared to when we started. First of all, we were talking about assembly, but now we're speaking about full-cycle manufacturing, where we manufacture our own microchips and assemble them. So this system is a high-quality system. It enables for updates. When we first started, we selected large blocks for assembly, but now we're talking about printing microchips, because we want to segment microchips in terms of operations and chains. We are working deep, and we're dealing with the industry. We are going to upgrade the scoring system to use our own chemical products for our plastics, for the hard cases and bodies for our devices. We are focusing on serious development procedures, because certainly development is harder than just turnkey assembly. This is a very good tool and framework. Certainly you're right, there is red tape. It is detailed, it is complicated and labor intensive, but it's necessary to fully understand the bricks, how the bricks for our construction, the foundation, how effective it is, how stable it is, and how it works and performs for our technological sovereignty and independence. Thanks so much. Lots remains to be done yet. If you do have any ideas, we will be prepared to sit down, even with the market players who are presented here, to work as a consolidator. And you also represent a platform which certainly has the right to emerge with legislating initiatives. The key point is for the Ministry of Finance to find the funding, right? Well, very well. Now, we have a great turnout from Rosatom group of companies. Please welcome Alexei Titarenko, the General Manager of Scientific Production Enterprise. This is one of the largest consumers of microelectronics, and consumers in the emerging markets are the customers defining the future needs. Gulnar mentioned from 350 down to 25 or 28 nanometers is the current range, and today and for the nearest decades in certain markets. So Evgeny Avakumov, he is with us online. Rosatom State Corporation is the largest consumer, not just a consumer, but actually the company shaping technological development, the microchip production needs, and how it all works with state programs. But the key point is that how today, at this point in time, such a huge world-renowned company, a consumer of radio electronic industry, could you please tell us about the most successful trends and vectors in implementation of radio electronic industry products and your positive experience and outcomes in implementation, how it actually works on your side, on the customer side? Thank you very much, Roman. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, we can see and hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Well, once again, thank you for this word of introduction. And I'd like to note that we are trying to be the process owner. Certainly, we are not the only ones, but the agenda in the technological sovereignty domain and technical infrastructure domain, this is the focus today of the government and the president. Using tools of Ministry of Digital Development and Ministry of Industry and Trade is a very good vector for development. And we are working here not just as one of the developers and creators of solutions, but those who have to implement these solutions. And I see the scaling effect, which emerges with wide-scale implementation of what has been created by the large community of Russian developers. Right now, I'd like to go back to the points I heard today, and first of all begin with the definition of technological sovereignty today in terms of critical data infrastructure. We understand that approaches are very similar in terms of realization of technological processes and computing equipment development, and the legislative base in the country is going to develop. The more good projects and facilities, infrastructural facilities will emerge, the better. And today, logic of technological sovereignty is understanding the technologies which we introduce into our data technological landscape. Speaking of databases, for example, availability of developing teams in Russia, the solutions they develop, the documentation supporting it, the actual process chains of both applied and industrial. And I feel that this is the next stage of development for the approaches in terms of register logic and Regulation 719 and the Ministry and the Digital Development frameworks and the stability in these processes in development in teams of developers creating these technologies for critical infrastructure is a very important aspect. Also, I would like to mention that today we understand that Gulnar is right. A wide range of solutions in terms of technological chain development can be created in the Russian Federation. Those that not should be built, first of all, in conjunction with Islamic world countries. And it's a very timely forum which is running today in Tatarstan, in Kazan. Its importance cannot be overestimated. And certainly this creates for the evolution of the customers and developers both, because on the one hand we need the scaling effect, providing the opportunity for feedback, quality feedback from consumers to manufacturers, and on the other hand, ability of the manufacturers to provide the industry with needed solutions. We understand today that our job is to launch these designs on large scale. Certainly today it's clear that we are on the verge of huge computing systems and computing equipment. They need to find more development in phantom, quantum development technologies, aggregation, different architecture of data systems is necessary when balancing orchestration on less productive solutions is going to be more necessary for providing stability of critical data infrastructure in a country. There is a saying, a joke, let them be more energy consuming. Thank God we have no problem in this country with space and power. So certainly perhaps we should slow down on this microelectronics arms race and think on dwelling on the necessary architecture for microchips, microcontrollers, and certainly the partnerships with friendly countries are important. Certainly we cannot overlook quantum photon computing development, but I think this is going to only come in 10 or 20 years. And we're not talking about large-scale production now. The third aspect is certainly cooperation. Technological sovereignty is impossible without cooperation. To me, it means that if we jointly develop a technology with partners and something isn't working in terms of interaction, that's not a big problem. Everyone should have an ability to understand the technology, the competencies for independent development, to deal with situations, to mitigate the circumstances we faced in the recent years. Roman has correctly mentioned the fact that sometimes we don't understand the black boxes we have in our house, what they contain, and how to deal with them. That's why partnerships with Islamic world countries are a priority today. And I heard Andrei today saying that factories are important. Speaking of complex projects, sovereignty projects, today we are on the verge of infrastructural projects, transplanting technologies, developing large industrial clusters, and the issue of developing cross-pollination here is very important, working in parallel. AI development is very important. The gigawatts of power that are going to be necessary for this development worldwide. Certainly, on the one hand, we understand that it creates for large growth in solutions, certainly microelectronics as well. And on the other hand, this capacity is impossible to be resolved through separate connections. We need to create large generation capacity and, of course, develop the energy sector along this vector. It's important also for our country partners that are also using these technologies. And Rosatom could be an important element of this paradigm for technological development and promotion.
So, to sum up, another thing that should be highlighted, that we should use in wide range import substituted technologies, because it's very important. We live in our technological paradigm with our technical issues in IT infrastructure field, and we need to learn how to use these new technologies. We have more difficulties in this new field, in new landscape of interaction, but it should be solved. And the educational agenda is somehow important one here, because we should cooperate in this field with our partner countries. We learn something from them, they learn something from us, and that's the possibility of transfer to the solutions which will be more transparent for each participant of the technological blockchain. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you very much. As always, very precise. And on your example, because you are one of the strongest market shaper, this example can be related to the whole country, but two questions. What do you think? Should we have, even if we won't find any other partners, our own industry of microelectronics, if we consider ourselves as an empire? And should it be on balance of our country, like nuclear weapons, which is one of our key tools to provide our independence from point of view of military control? Is it the same thing we must have, or should we have it in cooperation with our own partners, only if we find partners? If we find, we will actually do it. If not, then not. You know, it's very difficult. I'm not a specialist in microelectronics field. I can give you my opinion, but it's not an expert opinion. I have a simple question. We should have hubs, the plant in our country and the plant in our partner country, so we can exchange the technologies, the knowledge, expertise, in order to develop this infrastructure further. But today I think we are about to start, we should actually create the line of this equipment, because in any other way we can't achieve true sovereignty, true independence. Of course, several steps are now taken, but still we need to understand that mostly we have equipment from our partners of Belarus, but we still have to improve this equipment in our cooperation, to cooperate with other countries. So yes, I guess we need to have our own microelectronics, because it's the basis for many other technologies. Thank you very much. So, if you don't mind, Tatarstan is the region holding this forum, this roundtable. It's, I guess, the digital leader #1 in our country, in the Russian Federation. What do you think about our region? How can we help you? What can you tell about our region, our market? You know, because you know lots of things in this field. Please, your opinion, suggestions, ideas. Thank you very much. You know, a warm, fruitful discussion here. So I join the words of my colleagues, which gave their presentations before, but I want to us to go from this meeting with the thoughts which were not presented in our heads before. You know, sometimes separate trees don't allow us to see the forest in general. So if we don't see the global picture, we can actually spend lots of efforts, think that we work productively, but it won't be the same. So the question which was actually asked, I'll give you the answer a bit later. And I want to tell you some things to understand it better. What do we do? First of all, discussing microelectronics. While discussing microelectronics, I was thinking that it's like discussing agriculture, because you can't discuss agriculture separately from technologies. Because in Tatarstan we are #1 for producing milk. We don't produce grain. Krasnodar is #1 in producing grain. Bryansk is #1 in potato production. So everything exists in a certain context, as well as microelectronics. So you should understand this context to see the focus, because in my opinion, what happens right now in semiconductor industry, the world market of semiconductors is 6 billion rubles in 2021. It stagnates now. 22, 23 show that us that the market is in stagnation. Several reasons for that. Now it's 430 billion rubles, and we don't see any drivers to increase this sum. And now it's the age of generative AI. And the driver of this new age, of this new industrial revolution, will be the new processes, new things to speed up the computing, which we can see today. And what is it? Is GPU and the chips market. From 530 billions of market, it's 50 billion rubles, and it will increase 10 times in the next 10 years, because you can't find nowadays people without mobile phones, neither in villages nor in cities. After the next 10 years, everyone will have artificial intelligence, will use artificial intelligence in business, in any other fields. So this field connected with chips, I guess it's the focus which we, Russia, should pay attention to. What happens? Company NVIDIA, 80% of the market of chips, #3 company considering capitalization in the world. And it's not by chance. Here, you need to see it clearly. And discussing microelectronics, you need to confess to yourself honestly. It's not the task of Tatarstan. It's not the task of the people presented today here in this room. It's the project, if we talking like considering it like if we use Occam's razor to solve it, this project may be solved in an easy way, like Beria written to Stalin, but we should act, and we have to act too. Rosatom has been existing for 70 years. It's a state company. It operates worldwide. So until we get Roselectronics, the same as Rosatom, it can be compared to Rosatom, we can't achieve any progress in this field. This task can't be solved by business, panel discussions. We need Mr. Putin's decree to create such a industry, such a plant. We have all the necessary infrastructure, land, infrastructure, stuff in Tatarstan, so we can do it. So here, I'm very glad that happens in the government of the Russian Federation, that Mr. Putin plans the future. And now Ministry of Industry and Commerce can help us. We are glad that we have new defense minister. He's a great man. He was one of the pioneers of our industry, high-tech industry. So I guess that the military industry will focus on AI. Because now we have hybrid war, and I think that in this war we will use chips, because one unmanned aerial vehicle, which is cheap, can destroy some military airplanes which are really expensive to produce. So it's a real revolution here. We should understand that. So What I want to add, Gulnara has already told that Micron plant is named after Kamil Valiyev, the man who was born in Mamadish region, came to Moscow, and became the head of the first plant of processor producing in USSR. Today we also mentioned the surname of Bashir Iskanderovich. We named our new plant after that, after him. In 1948, he created the first computer in USSR. So it was a great achievement. And in 1948, so when nuclear blast was performed in 49, yes. So this computer helped our scientists to solve differential equations and to calculate the space orbit for the first satellite, you know, and it's great. So the country has already completed many important stages, and you know, we have great historical achievements, and we should actually use them as our basis to understand how should we act, what should we do. We should create an equivalent for Rosatom in the field of chips, of artificial intelligence, to finance it by using state money, you know. Because we have built a great new road from Moscow to Kazan. We found money, so we should find money for a new plant of microelectronics in Tatarstan. We should cooperate all together and in our country and take the necessary decisions in order to show the whole picture. What should we do? What do we do? Where do we move? Because it's not enough to discuss the necessity of microelectronics. It's well known. But the focus of attention should be sharpened, and it should be concentrated on AI. We have our colleague from a Russian company who actually created the first neuromorph processor in Russia, and it's a field which is of great importance. We can produce more. We have lots of great universities, like Innopolis. We should gather all together to create single operating unit, like Rosatom was created by Beria. He was a talented manager. He managed to find necessary people, like Mr. Korolev, for example. He brought him from prison to work, and he made great decisions for our country. We should follow his suit and do the same today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Usually you are a visionary person, and I guess that our thoughts in general they coincide. Microelectronics is like nuclear weapons. We should have our own production of microelectronics. It's out of discussion, because in any other way we can't be the real empire. We will be a country not independent from others, and we should move in this direction. Tatarstan is one of a passionary actually sites which is possible to provide spatial conditions, to provide expertise. I guess we are here not in vain, because here we understand that the OIC countries is a huge market, and we don't have the expertise, so we can actually cooperate with them, give our expertise. Our country should be the leader in this technological field. So we proceed to hardware and producing of computing equipment. So actually we have a plant which is one of the leading. What do you think? What's not enough for sustainable development of this field. What's not enough for you, for the producer who actually produces the things in which microelectronics is used? Thank you. Can you show my presentation, please? About BRICS, I will start with BRICS. We were mentioned before. So the last year, we actually opened new plant with the support of Innopolis and Industry Development Fund. We produce the whole range of computing equipment, electronic, hardware. An example of state-private partnership. 2 billion of rubles of investments. Innopolis helped us to build the great building which actually suits our demands. We invested 1 billion, and that's great. So we produce 1 million of our products a year. We have 300,000 motherboards a year. Of course, we have further plans. Of course, we will develop ourselves. We will increase the capacities of our production up to 1 million products a year. And right now, we already have more than 700 jobs, 48 types of production are also already in register. And there was the question, why do we need scoring system? Because it's a great assessment tool. Is it Russian or not Russian? And Svetlana already told us correctly that we can't assess everything in terms of money. We should also use other assessment means. I guess once we will come to raw materials, and we will assess it in raw materials, because if a country is rich in raw materials, it's good. And I want to support all the previous speakers. We need to deeply develop this field of technologies. We have all the necessary possibilities to produce everything on Russia's territory. And you know, embracing the new technologies, new ways of producing, it also about the cooperation with universities. We create labs on the basis of Kazan universities. We have our joint projects in plan, and we have our own design center, and we actually develop it. We have actually developed our own memory module, our own components, and we were included in the register of Ministry of Industry and Commerce. So we should actually be the first ones. Thanks to the help of the state, we managed to go to a market. We have created a new brand, Osio. Today, laptops of our company can be found in any electronic shop in Russia, DNS, MVideo, Eldorado, anywhere. So, answering your question, for the last 2 years, the state invested a lot in industry. It has never happened before, in my opinion. It's the help from the Republic of Tatarstan in building the new plant. It's the help from Industry Development Fund. ICL company is in the list of core companies of radio electronic industry. So we received some incentives in terms of tax, and we actually quite successful thanks to our state. But of course there are some buts. All these programs they either finished or will be finished in 2024. So in order to develop the industry, especially this complex as microelectronics, especially microelectronics, we need long-term programs. I will agree with Irat with anything, because if Roselectronics will emerge in the future, it will be a great tool for industry development. My vision is the following: without state support with global industries in which we have, or in which there is expertise of only several countries, you can't develop these industries without state support. Of course.
Thanks very much. Well, you nailed it. Towards the end of the discussion, all of the speakers approached each other and merged their positions. Once I was speaking to a scientist, and he joked, I apologize if it may seem rude, he said, smart people think alike, only the idiots differ. Well, I think we're all in alignment here, and if I may, I will speak taking off my moderator's hat. We certainly need a Ministry of Radio Electronics Industry. But look, I agree with Irat, based on the Singapore model, that we need a state corporation. Perhaps it should go public. Perhaps it should own 25%, refloat this at the stock market. We've got some great tools. Sergei Shvetsov is performing very well at the Moscow stock market and stock exchange. And certainly we need international cooperation. We need state support. And you know, there are industries that are moving in cycles. For instance, agriculture. If you don't sow this year, you'll reap more the next. And in the areas such as microelectronics and electronics industry, the processes have to be seamless. This year, I won't assign funding. Next year, there is more or less than national project than state program. It has to be accumulated kinetic momentum, at least 5 years to launch the whole process. For this reason, I would like to wish all of us, and certainly ask the country, the video recording of this conversation, of this session, will be edited and sent to the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And I'll send you the confirmation to the White House, to the Ministry of Science, because students and faculty staff are also very important in this process. And hopefully, by the way, Andrei once suggested a great idea. It may sound iffy, but with additional resources from state companies, they could be also asked to invest or invited towards investing into the business. And perhaps it should be 25% business, 25% refloat, 50% government support. And this could provide for corporate governance and the management of companies to be very well focused. All the best of luck to everyone. We are going to do the video edit of this session, and thanks the speakers of this panel discussion for supporting the forum, Tatarstan, and our discussion. All the very best and fruitful work. Thank you.